as Tara said, my name is Beth Ball. I'm with Cyturus Technologies. My part is working into everything that Tara just talked about. So what is going on? But more importantly, my part, is there anything we can even do about it? I mean, how many of you guys looked at that USB and actually could tell the difference? Anybody? I know some of you are gonna can cheat on that one, but there are so many things out there. Is there anything we can actually do? So we're gonna go over. You're right. You can't see anything, can you? All right. I'm more worried about that and my inability to not to concede to gravity. All right. So, whoops. Am I doing this right? No, I'm not. There we go. All right. Quick note about me. I am also a Navy veteran. So you have two not only veterans, but two female veterans, which I thought was wonderful. Speaking, this is the very first time I've ever had another female that I was put with, and a female veteran, so I love that. Other than just being a total nerd, I also play hockey. I have avid hockey player, founder of two different disabled veteran teams. One of them is the only all-female one, which you see right there. And yes, I'm a goalie. Yes, that means I'm crazy. Anybody that knows hockey knows the goalie is automatically crazy. Somehow in my head, I think it's easier to get hit by like a 40-mile-an-hour piece of plastic since I have a bunch of padding than it is to be out there on the rest of the ice with all those other guys. I'm like, you guys stay over that way. That's fine with me. So if you ever want to talk hockey in addition to anything cybersecurity, I'm your person. All right, so let's talk about what's going on. So we have the news, right? What do we think is happening? Ransomware, out of control. Is that true? We're almost to happy hour, people. Come on, you can do this. Thank you. So I based a lot of what I'm going to talk about today on the Verizon breach report and also the SecureWorks threat report, in addition to CISA bulletins and everything else. So when we want to start talking about statistics, because that's usually what you have to show somebody in order to prove your point, right? Ransomware, according to the Verizon report, did account for about a third of the breaches. So think about that, a third of the breaches. In addition, what about AI? Tara just talked about it. What are we going to do? AI has been analyzed by a lot of different companies. Right now, the threat is that it can make the threat actor just as efficient, if not more, than you are. So let me tell you where their thinking is. There is something called an obituary pirate, I think is the exact term. Do you know what they do? Somebody famous passes away. They take AI. The AI creates a website as a tribute to that person. And then, through SEO poisoning, they get it on the Google top of the list. Everybody who is a fan of that person, and actually a lot of people that probably hate that person, go to that site. That's not a real site. It looks like a real site. AI made sure it looked like a real site. It has a lot of information in it, more information than a person would have been able to get in that short amount of period of time and do the actual website itself. The AI did all of it, right? And now what happens? Well, you may already have malware, or it's going to direct you to other sites. Hey, go give money over here. Click this. Give money. All you have to do is click and fill out this survey. What do you think happens then? And this is from somebody passing away. It's ridiculous. But flip side, I don't know if you heard a couple weeks ago, Google AI with their large language model, they claim AI helped to find the very first 0 day. So flip side of it, maybe it is actually going to be something that we can use for good. It found 0 day in SQLite. Google immediately contacted the vendor. The vendor had it fixed literally that same day. Everything was fine. That's what we want to use AI for. Unfortunately, like I said, the same efficiencies that we get with AI, it writes our blogs, it rewrites our emails, things like that. It does those things that we don't want to take the time to do. Unfortunately, the bad guys are doing the exact same thing that we are. Supply chain. How many people think it's already out of control? How many think it's going to be out of control? Exactly. There's a lot I can say on that. But then we get into state-sponsored activity. That's out of control. What about critical infrastructure? Tara just told you that critical infrastructure attacks are up 500%, 300%, 300%. Truthfully, does it matter if I said 300 versus 5? Exactly, but thank you for that. This is, it's too much. It's too much for me on a daily basis. And actually, Tara and I were talking right before this. She was unfortunately trying to check news. One more thing happening, another thing happening. At what point in time do you end up looking like this? Because that is me every single day. You just get that glazed look and you're like, I have no earthly idea what to do. And can you give me some credit that I got a cat meme into my presentation? Thank you. All right. I couldn't upstage Tara with her quote, especially with the chief troublemaker, because I think that was the best, that's the best part right there. But I was trying to think of something that I can say as that flip side. What can we do? What is it that we can actually control and do? So, yes, that's my quote. If you agree, if you disagree, if you have a comment, come and talk to me in the vendor area inside Tourist. We're in Carasoft Alley, because I want to know. I had to pick only a few things to talk about. And just like with Tara, she could have gone on for hours. Everything that I tried to look up to come up with that flip side, okay, she has her side. What in the world do I talk about? For every one thing, I can talk about something. So what in the world are we going to do? Like, what is this real problem? Well, I'm only going to choose a couple of things. That's why I want to know if you agree at the end, if you disagree, if you have any comments, come and talk to me. So what's really happening? Let's go to numbers. Of course, remember, I'm looking at SecureWorks threat report. I'm looking at the Verizon data breach report. I'm looking at CEIC bulletins. Out of specifically, let's start talking about initial attack vectors, IAVs. Vulnerability exploitation. Some sort of vulnerability. It didn't say 0 day, and it didn't say something that's been around for a while. But a vulnerability. Now, to me, the first thing that comes up is, if it was a vulnerability, shouldn't I have known? So how did you, hacker, use it if I knew about it? Let's hold that thought for just a second, because as we are going to discuss in a few minutes, the vulnerability remediation time is slow. Does everybody agree with that one? How many think they have a really robust and really great vulnerability management program? Good, because I was going to come talk to you afterwards. Here's the part that I love the most. Humans accounted for 68%. They were involved in 68% specifically out of the Verizon data breach report, meaning they did something. Now, to clarify, that percentage does not include intentional. They specifically took the intentional insider out because it needed to be its own percentage. That statement I just said is extremely scaring to me. that 68% of the people made a mistake. They clicked something that could be phishing. They had access to something that they weren't supposed to have access to, and they actually accessed it. They were allowed to do something with a piece of data that they apparently were given technical, attributes to do. They actually did it, sometimes by mistake, not even realizing it. So let's talk real quick about some other numbers. So according to the Verizon report, does anybody have an idea of what the average data breach costs? Low number. I wish I could have given you that number. The low number, because you did this, you saw the same report. It was up into 2.3 million or something like that. The lowest number is around $50,000. You're going to skate by with $50,000. I want you to remember this, because one of the things I said in my quote, one of the reasons why certain companies will not do what they want or they should be doing is because they say they don't have the money. $50,000. Everything that Tara talked about could potentially have been fixed. That's a much better number than some of the other numbers, like $2.3 million, which was toward the top. I know a lot of people that do not have $2.3 million. I'm one of them. All right, so let's talk about some other statistics, because I love statistics. So this is a chart from the Verizon report, and it's the CEIC Known Exploited Vulnerabilities Catalog, okay? This is the time to remediation after an exploit is available. Okay, so keep this in mind. When we talked about vulnerability management programs, can anybody look and see what the mean is at about 50%? How many days is that? 55 days after a vulnerability exploit is available. So this is after the vulnerability is known. The exploit is now available. Only 55% actually have fixed the issue. Sorry, 45%. 50% of vulnerabilities were remediated. It took 55 days. So how long is it when you found the vulnerability and then when you found out that there was an exploit? And then even after that, it still takes, on average, 55 days. Critical. This is not high, medium, critical. I thought that was ridiculous. But what are you going to do, right? Oops. Did I go back? There we go. Oh, it is a different one. I didn't even know that. Okay. So now let's talk about this number. 5 days. That's how long it takes after vulnerability is known to be exploited, that it can be exploited, for the internet honeypots to start seeing scans for that particular vulnerability. But yet it's going to be another 50 days before 50% of the companies actually remediate it. This is why it's the number one initial attack vector. We are not getting to fixing the vulnerabilities in time. They're so much faster than us. And AI is just going to make it even worse. Let's look at the human factor. Remember I said that was 68% of all of the breach reports? So excluding privilege use, escalated privilege use, the human factor was 68% of the breaches, right? But unfortunately, can I tell you that's roughly the same as the previous reporting period? I don't know if I like that either. I would have liked to have seen it go, oh yeah, it's so much better than it was last time. No, it's the same. Humans are still an issue. Sorry. 28% was some sort of error, human error. Okay, so not malicious, just human error. I did something and oh my gosh, that worked, right? I didn't think it was. 15% of those involved a third party. Now this is inclusive of other software vulnerabilities, so we're talking about humans here, right? That is a 68% increase from the previous reporting period. Now, if you account for SDLC in third party, you could argue that the human factor is even more than that. Either the lack of SDLC, a problem in SDLC, something like that. But what we're seeing is that, yeah, we're the problem, part of the problem. Wait a minute, somebody else already said that. I think her name was Taylor Swift. Yeah, I'm the problem. But people like Tara and myself get paid to be the problem. And that's what makes it so fun. All right, so now what do we do? A lot of numbers, a lot of things going wrong. What in the world can we do? These, again, please tell me how you feel about them. Come talk to me afterwards. I could only pick a few, right? A key factor in most organizations, at least that I've dealt with, is that there was never a strategy to anything that they did. We need to pass an audit. Okay, I'm going to write a policy. But what's your strategy? What are you trying to do overall for your organization? Make sure it's in line with that. Have that overarching document that you can always go back to and say, is our mission still on mission? Always go back to it. Most of them don't do that. They're built simply out of what is and what needs to be. That's it. But here's one of the things that I always come back to. If you don't know where you're going, any road's going to get you there. Is that the way we want people doing compliance? Is that what we need in order to be able to keep our United States safe? No, I think it needs to be a little bit more than that. So something else we can talk about. With the rate of vulnerability remediation, remember that 55%, 50% in 55 days? Misaligned with the rate of exploitation, 5 days is all it takes for them to start scanning for it. There's no translation of the vulnerability over time in an enterprise risk program. So vulnerability management programs, they're hard enough to build and maintain, right? Normally strategy is behind these programs, but it's based upon SLA timing. It's IT based. It's not risk and vulnerability based. And this is a bottom-up approach, right? Because if I say that my program is good because I got 80% of my machines and they're patched, okay, but those 80% that you got patched, none of them are critical. They're not our critical servers. They're not our critical assets, because the other 20% is all our critical assets that we really, thank you very much for doing the 80%, but all of our important stuff is sitting over in the other 20. That's the problem with those kind of numbers. Did I meet the SLA? Yep, said 80%, I met it. Did it actually make my organization any better, any more secure? Kinda. But where was your CUI? Where was your HR data, your PII? Might have been in the other 20%. That's going to take another 2 months before we get those critical vulnerabilities actually worked on. Something else. Get the right people in the room. Get the right people in the room. Do not ever make decisions in a vacuum. This is huge, because a lot of times when you're working an incident, a lot of times if there's a high vulnerability, a high risk, sometimes in an organization it's, oh, well, IT's going to fix it. IT cannot answer a question on what the impact of that server going down to operations is. So IT talk to operations. Operations talk to IT. Don't just lead them and say, oh, they're going to take care of it. They will. They're smart. They can. But there's a bigger question of what they do and how that could potentially impact your organization as a whole. So get the right people in the room when you talk. And don't do somebody else's job, by the way. Don't make decisions if you don't think you have the right information. Make sure everybody communicates. Documents, communicates again. Documents again. Level up your user training. Now, 68% of the issue is us, right? Of all the data breaches, at least in the Verizon report, right? So what in the world are you going to do? Especially when I said that percentage is pretty much the same as it was for the previous reporting period, right? It's like, then your training program your user training is not working. Do something different. There's a lot of different things that you can say for this. Try to train more on the why. I mean, look at what Tara was just talking about and everything that could potentially happen. Show them that. Show them what is really out there actively being used. This is not just oh yeah, I know, I'm not gonna click on an email. This is so much more than that, because every single one of these people has a direct line into whether or not you're the next statistic that we show on the screen. Level it up. Find a way to get them to buy into it, to understand the whys of what we're doing, not just that they're not supposed to do this and they're not supposed to do that. Maybe pay for a password manager. Hopefully passwords will be going away here soon, but maybe your organization pays for a password manager. If that costs you $50,000 to pay for a password manager for every one of your employees, would you rather spend it on that, or would you rather spend it on the breach in conjunction with you being on the front page of the New York Times or CNN? See, and that's where it becomes a difference in perspective. The 50,000 exists. It's just, where is it going to be spent and where is it going to come from? That's the big thing. Another one. Whoops. And of course, this is now where my heart lies. Risk management. Get a comprehensive risk program. We are here for CMMC. CMMC, TISAX, TSAX, depending on if you're from Europe. Any one of those has a perspective that it's coming from. CMMC wants to protect CUI. It does not care about your intellectual property. It's not asking that. It's asking about CUI. So when you're looking at doing these frameworks, make sure that you're looking holistically at your enterprise, not just from the lens that somebody else gave you. So there are a lot of questions that CMMC doesn't ask. And this is just one of the things that we do at Cyturus. We are what we call framework agnostic, so our clients work with lots and lots of different frameworks. When we go to bring a new framework in, we do this analysis. It's called a Cyturus Risk Management Framework Modeling. One of the things we do is we take each one of the controls or practices and we put them into our own groups. Because when our clients are finished doing their work, they need to see if there's going to be a systemic problem in the organization. This is CSF 2.0. How many of you use CSF 2.0 as a risk framework? Just understand it's not covering everything. Use that, use something else, and then use something else. And I'm going to go through this really quick because we are already out of time. Also make a paradigm shift into continuous compliance, please. Stop checking the box. Make this a maturity thing within your organization. Make it over time. Be proud when you get from one level to the next, even if it's the smallest step, because what you just did made our entire nation more secure. And that's all the time we have today. I want to thank Tara and CEIC for having us.